Friends, we are very happy to inform you that e-modules are prepared for B.Ed program at Telangana by the School of Education, Osmania University under Pandit Madan Mohan Malaviya National Mission on Teachers and Teaching Scheme MHRD New Delhi. It's indeed our pleasure to share with the teacher educators and the prospective teachers and get maximum benefit out of it. It's a first of its attempt by us. We continue to add many more such lessons to share with you all.
I am Dr. Bhagyamma, working as Assistant Professor in Department of Education, Osmania University. Welcome to e-module Psychology of Childhood and Adolescence. Assumptions on Childhood and Adolescence. Life is filled with joy and sorrow, success and failure, health and sickness, wealth and poverty. It is hard to find a person who has not experienced these. There is also no scientific evidence to prove that a problem arises only after a certain age. In fact, problems arise when changes take place in our life. We find it harder to adjust, and this itself leads a problem. The changes taking place in our society have made themselves felt in various spheres of life: political, economic and social. Technological changes have made a major impact on people's lives and work. Industrialization has resulted in social and occasional mobility. It has affected child rearing practices too. Technological advancements and the changing socio-economic and political situations in the country shape adolescence and transition to adult roles and responsibilities. So, it is the adolescence group which is highly and negatively influenced by these changes. Even today, we hear the elders and parents expressing the difference between their generation and the present generation. Childhood. The definition of childhood. The Convention on the Rights of the Child, Article 1 states that a child means every human being below the age of 18 years unless under the law applicable to the child majority is attained earlier. It appears while this definition provides a point of a common reference for NGOs and governments and operational definition in different fields and international organizations. The meaning of adolescence. Adolescence means to emerge, to achieve identity. Personhood is what we want the adolescent to attain, not only just in its physical or intellectual aspects but also in his or her whole humanhood, which includes the often neglected but equally important aspects, which are emotional or psychological, social and spiritual. Young people may grow quickly in some ways and more slowly in others. This is why children who may be only 9 years, 10 years or 11 years old may be adolescents in some ways already, while teenagers are 13 years or 14 years may just be reaching adolescence. On the one hand, reaching out towards adult roles, and on the other still needing the love and protection of parents. It is a time when children undergo a crisis of identity, questions which have never bothered them before start hunting them now as they struggle for independence from their parents. They want to be their own person. The term adolescence comes from the Latin word adolescere, that means to grow or to grow to maturity. Maturing involves not only physical but also mental growth. It is a period which falls the gap between childhood and adulthood. Generally, this period is termed as youth. According to A.T. Jerslid, adolescence is a span of years during which boys and girls move from childhood to adulthood mentally, emotionally, socially and physically. In India, adolescence is a phase that is more difficult to define, particularly in 11 to 18 years for girls and between 12 to 18 years for boys. Dorothy Rogers has viewed this period as a process of achieving the attitudes and belief needed for effective participation in the society. So, there is no absolute age limit for a clear-cut boundary between the adolescence and childhood. Importance of adolescence. Adolescence is one of the periods when both the immediate and long-term effects on attitude, behavior are important. Adolescence has both physical and psychological effects accompanied by rapid mental development. So, the adolescent is eager to interact with new experiences, to find new relationships, to examine inner strengths and explore the strengths of inner ability. Adolescents try to have freedom to think and set their own goals at this period and continues to be in the same for a long time. Adolescent's task is not simply one of interacting with the external environment or with other individuals, but one of the developing their own potentialities. They try to explore their role in the world in which they live. So, the life script of adolescence continues throughout for a long time. In India, the adolescence period is spent in high school or a secondary school for the school going adolescents. A right career choice or a future plan can help them settle well in their future. Hence, this period is very important to plan their future. We find many of the youngsters regretting that if they were made aware of the consequences of neglection to life, a wrong career choice, a lack of proper planning, etc. Many research studies on unemployment have provided that wrong career course choice as one of the cause for unemployment. The happy moments one goes through during adolescence makes them recall their good or happy memories of adolescence period in their old age, and the bitterness one has gone through makes them painful even while they recollect those moments. Characteristics of adolescence. According to Jerslid has emphasized some characteristics. Firstly, the adolescent strives to grow up, to be big and yet also to have some of the security that goes with being little. Secondly, there is something radical about being an adolescent. It also something conservative. Thirdly, the adolescents, if able to draw upon their resources, have a great capacity for flexibility, yet they are rigid in many ways. So, adolescence can be a time of creative energy and vitality, of greatest zest for living. It can also be a time of self-expression, curiosity and exploration, a time of diversity and adventure. Slowly but surely, the boys and girls accept more and more responsibility for their own behavior. So, they do not expect too much of themselves too quickly, they find adolescence an exciting and rewarding time of life. So adolescence is something dynamic, something that changes from moment to moment. So adolescence is a period of anxiety, a time to adjust with the changes occurring in them during that period, a time to find out the reason for their existence. The family problems and foolish activities of their make them land up in pain or depression. When they do not find any way to solve their problems, they surrender to drugs. By consuming this, they lose their mental balance and try to forget their anxiety and depression. So adolescence has certain characteristics that distinguish it from the period that precedes it and that follows it. So some of the characteristics of adolescence: fast growth and structural changes in the body. The individual desires to be free and independent of all authority due to the sudden changes in body and other features like change in voice, changes in body proportions, secondary sex characteristics and expectorant. They feel inadequate at the beginning. They desire to like adults and therefore imitate the behavior of adults. Develop of new attitude towards oneself and others. Adolescents develop new attitudes towards themselves and others. Parents too expect adolescents to behave more responsibility and adopt adult ways of behavior. Adolescents express their dislike towards the established rules and regulations in the society. They strongly defend their views and opinions. Rising awareness of one's rights and duties. So adolescents become aware of their rights and duties. They also become conscious about social approval due to sexual maturity. Many physical changes take place in the body and this leads to change in the personality of the individual. The ideas, thinking and personality traits admired before seem to the adolescents as childish and undesirable. A new set of values and norms emerge and they are confused. Adolescence is a transitional period. Transition does not mean a break with or a change from what has gone before, but rather a passage from one stage of development to another. Confusing and dual standards. Adolescence is not an easy stage by any standards. The adolescent struggles between dependency and independence. They are caught between what their parents expect from them and what they want. They are confused about what they really want to do and be. Society on the whole does not make things easy. Admiring qualities of peers from the opposite sex. The adolescents admire certain traits in peers of opposite sex. Boys are admired by girls for traits like frankness, protectiveness, pleasing personality, neatness and good sense of humor. Boys admire girls for qualities like pleasant appearance, intelligence, friendly mannerism and kindness. Boys are late in sexual maturity by about a year than the girls of the same age. Therefore, generally girls are attracted to boys who are older than they are. Adolescence is a period of change. Adolescence parallels the rate of physical change. There are almost 5 universal concomitants of the changes that occur during adolescence. It is heightened emotionality. Its intensity depends on the rate at which the physical and psychological changes take place. Let's see the process of adolescent development. There are three major stages in human postnatal development, namely childhood, adolescence and adulthood. Adolescence is the period of development from one set of puberty to the attainment of adulthood, beginning with the appearance of secondary sexual characteristics, usually between 11 years and 13 years of age, continuing through the teenage years and terminating legally at the age of maturity, usually 18 years of age. Adolescence is essentially characterized by a sudden spurt in physical growth. All adolescents undergo significant changes in size, shape and physical capacities. Many experience considerable changes in their social lives, reasoning abilities and views of themselves. Based on their age, which adolescence starts at ends, it is apparent that most secondary school students are adolescents. Adolescence is a difficult period which calls courage for both adolescents and their parents. Three stages of adolescence: early stage, middle stage and late stage are experienced by most adolescents, but the age at which each stage is reached varies from child to child. The degree of maturity is linked to both physical development and hormone balance, neither of which the adolescent can monitor. They should be treated as individuals and the guidelines should be set individually. There are different theoretical perspectives to understand adolescent development based on particular assumption to explain the aspects of adolescence. Not a single theoretical perspective can successfully explain all the aspects of complexities of adolescence. So we can reach more comprehensive and well balanced understanding of the adolescent behavior only by exploring particular combinations from theoretical perspectives. So the experience of adolescence is greatly influenced by an individual's environment, both social and cultural. We can see the physical, emotional, social and psychological changes during adolescence. Adolescence is one of the most vital stages in human life and also one of the greatest crisis periods. So this stage has to be viewed in the context of physical, social, emotional, cognitive and moral provinces of growth and development. The developmental challenges are bipolar in nature, according to the Erickson. The uncertainty about one's role might cause many conflicts and poses many challenges. There is a rapid physical growth and there is an increase in weight, height. They begin to think hypothetically, draw logical conclusions based on observable data and develop abstract concepts that guide future decisions and actions. Cognitively, they develop greater thinking skills, advanced reasoning skills, abstract thinking skills, metacognition, thinking process in which individuals are able to think about how they feel and what they are thinking, and also being able to think about how they are perceived by others. So the parents, teachers and others, those wish to help them, must be aware of the symptoms clearly. So this awareness helps to develop constructive interventions and facilities emotional development in adolescence. It is also challenging time for parents. Even though it is a period of storm and stress, the major domains of disturbance during adolescence are conflict with parents, mood disruptions and risk behavior. So there is a psychosocial development and the adolescents learn to deal with many issues like establishing identity, autonomy, intimacy and becoming comfortable with one's own sexuality. Due to all these changes, adolescence starts spending more time with peers than their family. It becomes more involved in many hobbies. Even though in India, adolescents do most of the work themselves, it is usually parents who take major and final decisions. Transition from childhood to adulthood during adolescence is marked by the beginning of the reproductive lifespan in human beings. It involves sexual maturity in terms of hormones and physical development of the body and is also characterized by an increase in the social behavior and their group interactions. So adolescents become progressively self-conscious and concerned with other people's opinions as they go through puberty and the periods of adolescence. So this way the psychosocial context of adolescence is remarkably different to that of childhood and adults' relationship within the family. So they begin to assert more autonomous control over their decisions, emotions and actions and start to unravel from parental control. So they become highly self-conscious as they constantly and realistically apprise themselves. So it is the beginning of a long range goal setting. Emotional and social independence is the direct outcome of the self-evaluation, so which it helps them in making of a mature adult. So these stages may not occur during the age span indicated and many overlapping may happen in these stages. So during early adolescence, age 11 years to 13 years, adolescents develop new self-image owing to their physiological changes. During mid-adolescent, 14 years and 15 years, the emotional and intellectual capacities are increasing. And later during late adolescence, age 16 above, the adolescents have a more stable sense of identity. So what theories are explaining about the nature of the adolescence? According to Sigmund Freud, conflict is an essential part of the physical changes of adolescence. According to Freud, he viewed conflict as a preparatory phenomenon to the genital stage of mature adults' sexuality. So unafraid, he considered the adolescent years more important for the formation of personality. So she believed that the libido, which quieted during the latency years, reawakens in adolescence and threatens to upset the delicate balance of ego and it. So anxiety calls forth such ego defense mechanism as intellectualization and asceticism. According to Erikson, 1968, he believed that the chief task of adolescence is to resolve the conflict of identity versus identity confusion to become a unique adult with an important role in life. To form a person's identity, the ego organizes abilities, needs, desires and helps adopt them to demand of society. So, the search for identity is lifelong. It comes into focus during adolescence. We can see according to Erikson, so the primary danger of this stage as identity. The confusion which can express itself in a young person's taking an excessively long time until after 30 years to reach adulthood. So, a certain amount of identity confusion is normal and accounts for the chaotic, volatile nature of much adolescent behavior as well as self-consciousness about appearance. So, according to the biological explanations based on psychological tranquility, the adolescent youngster is confronted with a chaotic and strong sexual drive. He experiences unpredictable anxiety, stress and strain during the period of puberty and takes recourse to many activities as means of avoiding threat of sex. The cultural interpretation of adolescence states that adolescents experience a rapidly widening life space along geographic, social and future time dimensions and are caught in ambitious overlapping between the roles of the child and adult. So, in a dynamic and heterogeneous culture with ambiguous and conflicting situations, young adolescents feel ill-equipped to tackle them. So, they are engrossed with conflicts, values, emotional tension and extreme attitudes. They are facing many problems at the stage of adolescent. So, people live together, personal problems, family problems and community problems. So, these appear on the horizon of everyday living. So, drug abuse, homelessness, crime, delinquency, mental illness, suicide, school dropouts and numerous other social problems which are around us at every turn. So, this globalization has not only affected the economy alone, it has affected every individual, their behavior and in the society a whole. The changes taking place in the society, further it leads to adolescent problems. We can see the features of changes in the society. The whole society is changing. It includes changing in our very social fabric, changes in our surroundings and changes in us individuals. Changes began to take place in our way of life, in our lifestyle. Changes take place even into our manner of thinking. So, this was not only in the world of grown-ups, but in the world of children as well. So, naturally changes also come about in parenting patterns. Here the educational system is also very much responsible for a good portion of this change. Schools' roles are very important. So, schools no longer cater to just academic achievements and excellency. Extracurricular activities like sports, games, arts and crafts have their place as well. Parents are putting in greater efforts on their behalf and a lot of focus is directed towards them in terms of budgeting, living location, fixing the social calendar, etc. So, it sounds to be an easy task. The end result is stress. So, this stress is taking a heavy toll on parents' sense of well-being and creating unwhole problems for parents to whom children are the embodiment of their unfulfilled dreams and ambitions, insurance for the future and their source of joy and happiness. So, this type of pressure is transmitted in turn to the adolescents and affects their well-being too. So, children today They want to know more. They like to learn more and they want more. So they make demands on their parents which cannot always be met. More often, parents do not agree with many of these demands. This leads to arguments, friction and tears on both sides. The media bludges have a very bad effect on youth. Globalization has further brought about social strains that were non-existent before. So at the time of independence, it was said that our country was 50 years behind the times. As time went by, this 2 years behind the times, it began to change. Cultural gap. So in India, we are not merely facing a generation gap today, but a wide cultural gap. The result is more and more friction between parents and children, which reaches its peak during adolescence. Parents are realizing that children cannot be controlled anymore. They want to be seen and heard. They have no time for cumbersome procedures to do anything the old-fashioned way. There are pre-furnished houses. There are services available within minutes or just a phone call away or at your doorstep. So parents want advice in the area of parenting on the same lines, something similar to a do-it-yourself kit. Do-it-yourself kit. Disorganization of city. The absence of community feelings, lack of family unity, moral laxity, unstable personality, increase in crimes, disorganization, marital problems, shortage of houses, diversity, artificial and dependent existence, and stimulating atmosphere. These all are impacting. Urbanization had led to decline in social sympathy, lack of informal social control, decline in family control, decline in the influence of religion, changes in the status of women, changes in the institution of marriage, changes in family structure, professionalization of entertainment, scarcity of living accommodation, slums, changes in moral values, breakdown of joint family, increase in evil professions, increase in the incidence of crime, increase of juvenile delinquency, corruption, conflict and competition. So in spite of all its drawbacks and inequalities, the joint family system of the good old days had a sound inbuilt support system that cannot be debated upon. So in the large joint families, friction was present but wisely diffused by an older member of the household or head of the family. One did not have to go to legal or social counselors to sort out husband-wife squabbles or children's maladjustments. Within the joint family, children did not feel alienated from family and friends. They were never lonely. There was always a siblings or a cousin to play with. There was always someone to listen to them. There was always a lap to snuggle in and a shoulder to cry on. To tap it all, there was always someone to shower affection on them. So give them a hug or a kiss at frequent intervals. Children felt loud and secure even during the so-called turbulent teens. Next we can see the working mothers. Changes in parenting patterns also emerged due to the increasing number of educated women and working mothers. Man is no longer the only earning member of the family. Woman became a co-earning member now. So, in a number of cases, this was due to a financial need which could not be traced to rising prices and cost of living. So, in many cases it was also because women wanted to find a creative outlet and assist their own personality. So, they not only wanted to walk hand in hand with men, but to work shoulder to shoulder with them in their quest for an ideal marriage and a happy family. So, in fact, today more and more mothers are asserting their views and exercising their ideas of bringing up children. At the same time, fathers are also beginning to attach more importance to their role as fathers and have begun to take more interest in their children. We can see the family disorganization. Sometimes family disorganization is mainly due to lack of family unity, decrease in family control, strife, laxity in marital bonds, lack of protection, conflict between parents and children. Sometimes we can see the personal adjustment. Quite a number of students of our college and university campuses find themselves in the grip of personal adjustment problems. Drug addiction is no longer an uncommon experience in our institutions of higher learning. Unfortunately, the suicide rate among the students too is increasing. All these factors imply that we take a hard, realistic look at the problems of the adolescents to take right measures at the right time in their life. Many of students are under pressures on the home front are numerous. One of the primary ones relates to studies. So, the social pressures tend to carry over to school life. Relationships. The pressures at school often exist because of the insecurity at home. Of course, the school itself can be a hotbed of tension in several areas. Their academic activities, their co-curricular activities, their extracurricular activities, adjustmental problems with teachers and peers, relationships with classmates and schoolmates. So, the negative relationship with the parents, teachers and classmates, it disturbs the adolescents. That's why they are in a critical position. Drug addiction. When problems merge and seem to be heavy for the adolescents, they take refuge in drugs. Drug addiction among adolescents has spread throughout the country. Even villages are not excluded. Any drug addict will follow any means to earn habit and will not hesitate to commit any crime. So, they become very dangerous to their family members and the society and may attack anyone, anytime, like lions on the prowl. We can see sometimes teenage pregnancies. Parents fail to understand their growing children's inhibitions regarding sex matters, and the Indian family scene is still embedded in the age-old concept. The change is occurring in the adolescents and the lack of guidance, it combined to create communication gap between the two generations, which has led to many complicated problems. Added to this, there are problems of early marriages among adolescents. The problems raised out of these marriages usually affect the personality of the females as well the personality of the children born to them. Problems of adolescent socialization. So many adolescents have problems of socializing and they are merged into the adult world. They are sex hormone related and need understanding. The physical growth and development during adolescence have a great impact on the emotional world of a youth. So an adolescent, boy or a girl, it gets newer body having newer ideas and attitudes. The main aspect of their thought is that they pose suppose themselves to be the fittest in the adult world, but they can also have a serious inferiority complex. So what are the causes for the problems of adolescence? The technological changes have made a major impact upon people's lives and work. Industrialization has resulted in social and occasional mobility. It has affected child rearing practices too. The causes for adolescent problems are studied under the following themes. Individual. So the adolescence is preceded by childhood. It is widely acknowledged that maximum development takes place during the first 6 years of childhood. So these children show a tremendous capacity to absorb a lot from their surroundings that consist of their homes, families, peer groups and the general environment they are exposed to. It is important to note that whatever children feel or observe is stored upon in their subconscious mind. So in addition, all memories so accumulated since childhood, they have a profound impact on the growing up into maturity stage, that is adolescence. Moral values are assaulted almost every day by materialism that has crept into our society. Consequently, we lack conviction and the resulting practice what you preach. Attitude of the younger generation towards the old generation has complicated each and every aspect of a child's life. Family. Adolescents are deprived of imbibing the culture and traditional values, which they formerly did through grandparents and felt time with mothers and aunts in the joint family way. They have time which they spent with their peers. Radio, movies, cheap literature and other media for communication related. Their moral growth and transmit shall allow short-lived goals and estrange them from older generation. So there is hardly any interaction between parents and children which has an adverse effect on both. So parents tend to shower their children with materialistic things in order to compensate for their absence. This becomes a problem later on when this generosity backfires and the children get out of hand and become rude and disrespectful when their wishes are not granted immediately. So most teenagers are more concerned about their physical appearance than about any other aspect of themselves, and many are dissatisfied with what they see in the mirror, especially if they are maturing much sooner or later than most of their friends. So there is enough stress placed on adolescents by the education system. So the parents who should be the source of strength and support put additional strain of them. A number of these anxieties end in suicide attempts. So the areas that bring about these negative reactions to school are many. The most common are poor teaching, boring lessons, too much homework, strict and meaningless rules and regulations, and the manner in which the school is run. Adolescent students are often critical of teachers, not just the way they teach but also the way they dress, behave and play favorites. What are the problems affecting towards adolescent? India has its own traditional culture where family relationships are very strong. So the adolescent problems increase, these relationships will lose their values and people will go astray. It becomes very tough to build a harmonious society. The increase in juvenile delinquency would lead to increased rate of crime. Education level would decrease the value for education. So early adolescent marriages will lead to broken marriages. There will be increased number of maladjusted families due to lack of proper guidance. The values of Indian families will be completely lost. As per the famous proverb, today's child is tomorrow's citizen. And the problematic adolescent of today would be the problematic citizen of tomorrow. The highest suicide rates will create an adverse impact on the other youth. So, juvenile delinquency is a social phenomena that is universally observed. The process of industrialization, urbanization and individualization have further accentuated the span of delinquency. The increase in juvenile delinquency would lead to increased rate of crime. Very important thing, the parent-adolescent relationship and nature conflict. So, these adolescents find their parents authoritative, controlling, nagging, whereas parents find their children aggressive and destructive. There is a decrease in closeness and intimacy in the relationship. So, generally conflict is more about relationship, about clothing, music and leisure time than about more serious matters such as religion and core values. It is rarely about major issues like drug use and delinquency. It is the conflicts increases during early adolescence is reasonably stable during middle adolescence. So, it declines when the adolescent moves away from home. Although conflict is a normal part of adolescent relationships, higher levels of intensity lead to hostility and limited potential for future interactions. There are many studies proved, Patterson, Montemeyer, Larson. The studies are revealing adolescents gain increased capacity for logical reasoning. They start demanding satisfactory explanations from their parents for the issue which was accepted by them previously without any question, and as consequence they start arguing for their new findings. So, they develop critical thinking. They don't prefer to follow their parents' views and instructions the way they used to in their childhood. So, the cognitive skills get refined which make them point out in their parents' positions and actions. They become more sensitive towards their parents' remarks. Parental changes can also contribute a lot to this conflict. According to the study reports, 40% of the parents of the adolescent children undergo difficulties during this transition period, such as lowered self-esteem, increased depression, decreased life satisfaction, increased anxiety. And parents' life stage, a middle age, can also be decline the physical strength and attractiveness. Effect of parent-adolescent conflicts in adolescence. The family conflicts are inevitable. Adolescents feel that conflicts arise because parents don't provide emotional support they expect, whereas parents feel that the adolescent is not fulfilling the expectations held for them. So, lack of harmony about family or societal values. So, parents and adolescents have conflicts in the same areas like course, appearance and politeness. Parents from all racial ethnic groups reported arguing about the same issues. So, the presence of conflict at any time, the parent-adolescent relationship, it influences the behavior and development of the adolescent. So, it results adolescents starts thinking negatively about themselves. The study shown Shagil and Barber in 1993. In short, parent-adolescent conflict affects adolescent development. It is proved significantly according to Rubinstein and Feldman in 1993. It becomes a vicious cycle about the adolescent's problem, increase parent-adolescent conflicts. So it is a dramatic challenge for the adolescent, demands adjustments to changes in the self, in the family and in the peer group. So it is a time of excitement and anxiety for both adolescents and parents. So naturally there will be an exchange of positive and healthy behaviors, which reflects good adjustment and social success, and sometimes it is opposite, which reflect poor adjustment and problems of developments. We can conclude the major problems in adolescence are related to growth and development. The child is completely dependent upon others and learns gradually to be independent. So it is a very important transition period, independent. And it plays a decisive role in the formation of a pro-social, anti-social adult. So it poses many challenges both to the parents and their adolescents. So although it is full of excitement, it also demands a lot of adjustment in all the major fronts of life. So this stage represents a period of crisis which is full of storm and stress. Adolescence is also time of establishing a personal identity. The very uncertainty about individual's role itself causes many conflicts. The ambiguities increase and the adolescent doesn't regarding their adolescent's life and take decisions regarding their major issues. So most of the time they treat their adolescents as children. So conflict is heightened when adolescents wish for autonomy, especially in decision making, and they think their parents are incapable of handling responsibilities. Sometimes parents fail to become involved in this process and allow their children too much autonomy in decision making. So it is stressful for both parents and teenagers. The separation has to be made easier because for parents it is very painful to see their child pulling away. Adolescents fear losing parents' love when they push themselves towards freedom. Without disturbing the lovable relationship, the adolescent has to establish independence and autonomy. So this is the difficulty the adolescents face in becoming adult. Naturally, adolescents show more anger towards parents during this stage, and parents bear the effect of the adolescent's frustration for having an in-between status. Parent must understand that these behaviors are part of normal development and not a personal attack on them. Otherwise, they might overreact and resentment becomes more with the adolescents. So it is a time of transition from parent control to self-control. So conflict between parents and adolescent is a risk factor for the depression. So anxiety and low self-esteem. So the high level of conflict, it results in high level of depression. So conflicts with family can push already troubled youth to the tipping point where they become quite hopeless, or they become overwhelmed with the stresses that they are managing. So they might even start to think of suicide as an option to deal with the overwhelming stress. So depression and conflict with parents play a very large role in the adolescent's suicide. So for parents and adolescents living under the same roof, conflicts are inevitable and normal. When the conflicts get accumulated without resolution, it may become a problematic. So when the conflicts get accumulated without resolution, it may become a snowball and the relationship might get affected. Thank you for your patient listening.